Hello, my name is Sean Taylor, and I'm here to talk about Quantity 1 today. I'm a field application scientist with Bio-Rad Canada, and what I'd like to do is just run you quickly through how to analyze data using the Quantity 1 software package. So I have Quantity 1 open here in front of me, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a file, and the file I'm going to open is one that I typically like to play with. So the file is here under FAS Presentations, Training Images, and it's my homework contest file. So there we go. So I've opened the file, and this file, as you can see, is a dilution series of a molecular weight marker for DNA. This was taken using an agarose gel. And it was taken, if I right-click and I look at the image report on this. This image was taken using our GelDoc XR. So, how do we analyze data? So first, what I'd like to do is walk you through a couple of the features of the software before we get into data analysis. And as I started off, I right-clicked in the image. So I right-clicked, and what you can do, there's a few options in the right-click where you can sort of view the entire image. You can zoom in on particular aspects of the image if you wish, or to zoom back out, you right-click again and just click View Entire Image. You can also transform the image. And transforming is like brightness contrast, so you can increase the darkness or lightness. You can see the fainter bands more easily, as you can see here. You can also invert the display if you wish. You can also turn off the saturated pixels. So the saturated pixels are the pixels that are red, and those pixels have basically gone beyond the limit of detection of the camera. So you can turn those off as well if you wish by just clicking them on or off. The pixels are still saturated. You're not somehow desaturating. You're just turning them off in the view. So I'm going to leave them on, and I'm going to leave the display inverted because I prefer black on white bands when I look at my agarose gels. And I'll click OK here. So now I can see everything. And if I right-click, I can also hide overlays. Those would be overlays would be things that you would add to the image, like text or whatever. And I showed you already the image report. So image report is how we can look at what we put on the image. So you can see that I actually did add text here, and I'll show you how to show that text in a little while. You can add descriptive data. You can save the image. It tells me when the image was taken, the image report, what instrument. It also tells me the resolution of the image and what I did to the image over the history of since I took it. So I rotated, I cropped, I rotated again, and the exposure time was 0.211 seconds, and it was in UV transmissive mode, which makes sense because it's an agarose gel with lithium bromide stain. Okay, so that's the right-click. So right-click has a bunch of features that you can use to look at the data quickly in your image. Now, you also have some image tools up here. So I just want to show you how to, first of all, export the image. So saving an image is very straightforward. It's just saving, and I recommend always saving your images as Quantity 1 files because that image info report will always carry the historical data. If you save it as a JPEG or TIFF, that historical data goes away. So what you can do also, though, if you want to export it to TIFF or JPEG, you can just click here, export to JPEG, export to TIFF, and you'll be able to export the image with no problem whatsoever. Under image, you have a whole bunch of tools as well. The transform tool is there again. That was in the right click, but you can also crop the image. And in this case, I am going to crop the image. I'm going to crop out those bands, those lanes that were saturated. So you basically just click and drag your crop area, and then you move into the image, and you see the pair of scissors. If you keep moving towards the middle, you get the crosshairs. You can move the crop area with the crosshairs. And if you go to the scissors, you can just click, and then it asks you if you want to crop it or copy and crop the image. So I typically like to copy and crop. And then it saves the image as the same original file name with a version 2 at the end. So save. So there's my cropped image. So now I can turn off the previous image, and I have my new cropped image. All right, so there we go. And I'm going to center this image by right-clicking and viewing entire image. So there. So now I have my image ready to analyze. Also under Edit, I can, under Image, I can flip and rotate and so on. So if I want to rotate the image, I can rotate 90 degrees left or right. I can also do custom rotation as well if I want to rotate the image just slightly to make the image easier to center the image more. It's always best for analysis to have the image as straight as possible in your field of view. So now we're going to analyze the data. And the method that I recommend using for analyzing data is always using band analysis. Okay, and this is the only feature that I'm going to show for data analysis. It's right here, the quick guide. So it's band analysis quick guide, as you can see here. You click there and you get a quick guide, and you just follow the steps from top to bottom. So we've already opened the file. I've shown you the zoom box, and we've already transformed so we can see the fainter bands. Now we're going to step 4, which is frame length. So you click on frame length and ask you the number of lanes to create. And in here, obviously, we have 6 lanes. Always indicate the total number of lanes, even blank lanes, to be able to do the analysis properly. So I'm going to say 6 here. Click OK. So now I have my 6 lanes. And I'm going to stretch the frame using these anchors such that the lanes, the lines that make the lanes go through the center of the bands. Okay, so that's what I've done. All right, so there, that looks pretty good. Excellent. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is and it's already gone to stretch frame because I've stretched the frame. If you're not sure how to use these tools, the little help icons really are useful, actually. So if you click on a help icon, it gives you a little bit of descriptive information on how to use the tool, and you can go click more info and it'll give you even more information. Each of these tools are very useful. So it's a self-teaching tool as well. So next is to add or adjust anchors. So if you have a weirdly shaped gel, you know, we often run gels that go in one direction or another. If we have a fat potato of a band, it sort of squeezes the lanes around it, so the lanes are a little bit distorted. Click on Adjust Anchors. And you can adjust the anchors by just adding more anchor points. I'm just clicking in various places, okay? And you can add anchors either within a lane, as I've done here, or across the whole lane by clicking at the top of the lane, and now I've added more anchors here. So when I move an anchor, I click on the anchor and I can actually bend the lane where the anchors are. So I can make it all bendy as I wish. Okay? The goal being to get your lanes in the middle of the bands, as much in the middle of the bands as you can. Don't spend too much time doing this. If you have a fairly straight gel, I would say 90% of gels will not require you to add or adjust anchors. Okay? But I can't remove the anchors here with this quick guide, so I'm going to go to the help icon and click More Info to find out where those tools are. So those tools are in the Lane Edit Frame submenu. Okay, so Lane Edit Frame. Aha, Remove Anchors is here. So I click there, and I'll remove the anchors that I've added. Yeah, so now I'm back to what I was before. So there we go. So now, next step is Lane Background. So I click Lane Background. And what I do is I click on a lane that has sort of medium intensity bands, and it gives me a toolbar. As you can see here, I have this lane subtraction toolbar, and I'm also able to see a graphical representation of how the software is interpreting the lane. So you can see that it's actually interpreting the lane where each band is a peak of intensity. Okay, even this faint band down here is viewed as a little peak, as we can see here. So that's pretty good. We're able to see peaks of intensity, where the bands are. And what the software is going to do is it's going to integrate the area under these peaks based on a background subtraction. So we want to make sure the background is subtracted accurately, and as you can see, the background is quite variable down this lane. It starts off at 1,000 or almost 1,000 units, and it goes all the way down to under maybe 200 or 250 or 300 units down here. So it's very variable background. So let's subtract the background. So what you can do is all lanes on. We're going to subtract the same level of background across all the lanes. And you reduce the size of the rolling disk here to get your background closer to the background. Right now it's a very sort of a linear subtraction. I want it to follow the contour of the background. So I'm going to reduce my rolling disk. So I'm just clicking on the down arrow, and I'm looking at the red line here to see how close it gets to the background. So if I keep going, you can see that that red line is getting closer and closer to my background, which is what I want. Perfect. I don't want to go too far. If I go too far, now I've taken the peaks as well. I'll have no data. So I think 3 was an optimal setting. Okay, and then what I can do is I can click where the other lanes are to see how the background. Whoops, did I do that only for one lane? Oh no, I want to do all lanes on the same level. I was using down here, so I'm going to reduce this to 3. There. Okay, so now everything's at 3. I was using single lane subtraction, which is the bottom. So if I click on each lane, I can see that the background is now nicely subtracted from the peaks. Okay, and you can actually notice how the peaks change in their shape, their width, and their intensity as the bands get thicker, right? The peaks really do encompass the entire shape of the band, and we're going to integrate the area under these peaks. That's what the software is going to do. So it's a very accurate way to get density data from your gels. All right, so that's done. Background is subtracted. So I'm going to click Done here. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next step, which is Detect Bands. So again, you get a toolbar with Detect Bands. Lots of information in this toolbar, but the only features that you should really need to adjust are lane width, sensitivity. These are the first two, and then a couple of these features up here, these little boxes. Okay, so I'm going to start with lane width. So I like to increase the width of my lanes to encompass, the thickness of the bands. Okay, so that's not bad. That's pretty good. Maybe a little bit more there. You don't want the lanes to, you don't want the bands to touch the other bands, right? You want it to integrate the density underneath the bands. So that looks pretty good. The next thing is sensitivity. So I'm going to increase the sensitivity so I can see the faintest bands that are down here at the bottom. So you increase sensitivity, and you'll see more bands will appear. Okay, so I have some artifactual bands that have appeared, along with the bands that I wanted to detect. And always use the sensitivity feature to find the bands you want. Okay, because the integration under those peaks is much better. The software does a really good job of integrating if you automatically detect bands with sensitivity. Because then what you can do is you can use these features up here to delete bands. So I'm going to delete bands, remove bands at cursor, and I can click on individual bands to remove them, or I can just box them by clicking and dragging. So it's very fast to clean up your gel once you've detected bands. I can also add bands, so by clicking on this tool. So I can actually add bands. And I'm not adding a band, I'm just adding a place where it's going to look for density underneath that. So I can do this as well. This I would do particularly with Kumasi stain gels, where you really need to detect all the markers. And some markers are very faint, so you just add a band where the marker is, because you don't really care about integrating underneath the marker, you just care about sizing your band. So that's a good place to add bands. I would never add bands over bands that I want to integrate for densitometry. So I'm going to delete all these. Done. Okay. So then I can also look at how it's integrating the peaks. So this is the middle tool here. So I click on a band, and I can see it's going to integrate perfectly underneath that peak, that peak, that peak, You know, so you can see exactly how it's going to integrate, and it does a good job of finding the beginning and end of a peak. So there's very little to be done there in terms of having to integrate. Okay, so I'm going to say close. So now we've found our bands. We've subtracted the background, which is important. And now we're going to do standards. So the next is standards, step 9. This is for molecular weight. So for molecular weight, I'm going to click, you know, you can add a new standard if you don't have to use Bio-Rad standards. And you can say, okay, the units are molecular weight or base pairs, depending on what you're doing. Click OK, and you can add in a standard by just type in the name of the company you bought from and so on, and the base pairs going down to the standard, and then just click Archive. And once you've clicked Archive, it will appear in this menu. Okay, so I think I added, no, I didn't add any here, but I did in previous demonstrations. So I'm going to select the 100 base pair molecular weight ruler here. Okay. So you click on a reference band. So first of all, before I do this, let me get rid of this information here, because you know, these tend to stay between steps. So what I'll click on here is show. This little icon is show lanes and bands. There, so now I can see all my lanes and bands, and everything goes away. Standards, 100 base pair molecular weight ruler. And what you do is you click on the uppermost band and match it up with the molecular weight. So let's say this band was 3000. I would click here on this arrow here, click there, and now it automatically sizes the bands going down. So that's done. So I've sized all my bands by molecular weight. The next is band attributes. So if I click band attributes, I can show individual sets of data here by clicking. So I can show, for example, base pairs. So you can see now that I've sized my bands, and this is why it's very important to make sure you select all the bands in the molecular weight and delete ones between, because it dumbly starts, the software doesn't know what's what. It just starts from the top and works its way down in the molecular weights. So if there was one in between, it would call that one 2900 instead of this one, as an example, and you'd mess up your molecular weights. But you can see it sized the bands very nicely based on this molecular weight here. You can also add, by the way, you can add other molecular weights. So you could add a different standard in another lane, or the same standard, let's say. Okay, and I can add it to an additional lane, say this lane. And now it's going to do the average migration of those two to size these ones. So if I go back to band attributes, so let me click close here. If I go back to band attributes now, and I click base pairs, the numbers here will be different than what they were when I just used this lane as the standard, because it's using the integration between those two lanes. So it's very nice, this software, for accurate sizing of bands. If I don't want to use these molecular weights, I can go back to standards, click on any molecular weight you want, any of them, and just click here, I think it's here, to delete the collection of bands. So click here, and I'll delete my standards. So that's all done. Okay? So now I'm not using standards anymore. So the next step, again, band attributes. I can also look at area under the peaks now for these bands. So if I click on trace quantity is the area under those peaks. If I'm not sure what these are, I can click help here, and it tells me for each one what they are. But trace quantity is, trace quantity is the quantity of the band is measured by the area under its intensity profile. So it's the most accurate method of determining the density of your peak. So if I click trace quantity here, I can see clearly the numbers. So 73 to 125 to 320 to 820 to 1700, 51 to 96. So this looks like pretty close to a two-fold serial dilution series. as you can see here. Even these faint bands are pretty well done in terms of the full dilution between each one. It's pretty nice. So, so it does a really good job. As long as you've done the accurate rolling disk for background subtraction and you've selected the appropriate bands, it does a really nice job of integrating the area under these, so you get really good densitometry data. So I like to use, in this tool, I like to use band number. Okay? So you can see that what it does is it numbers the lanes and then numbers the bands within the lanes. But you can see the numbering is a little bit off here. 1, 2, 4, 5. Like this one's good. 1, 2, 3, 4. But then you go 1, 2, 3, 6. You know, and that's because of the bands I deleted before when I was doing detect bands. So what I can do is I can renumber the bands. Now that I've detected everything I want to detect, I can renumber my bands. Let me just try and center this better. There we go. I can renumber my bands using edit, sort, and recalculate. And I just click on that, and now it's renumbered the bands from top to bottom within each lane. So if I go to band attributes again, I click band number, now everything's nicely numbered. Okay, so what I've created essentially now is a map of my gel by lane number and by band number within each lane. The last step in the process is the all lanes report. So I click there, and I can literally report on any feature that I wish to report on. So I'm always going to select band number. I'm always going to select trace quantity because I want to know the density. And if I did size my bands, I would click base pairs as well if I wanted to. Okay? Then I click report. And I get a report by lane, lane number, band number within each lane, trace quantity. And I can click to each page. Now this is pretty useless in terms of a report because it's, I can't do much with these data. But if I click down here, this icon down here, export report to disk, and I always like to export it in Excel format but to clipboard, click OK, and then if I open Excel, let me open my Excel, Microsoft Office, there, Microsoft Excel. So if I open up Excel, and I right-click and just paste, and now I have my data. So you can see it's also taken with the data all the selections I used in step 8 and in step 7 for background subtraction. So step 7 for the rolling disk size and step 8 for all the sensitivity and width and bandwidth and all those features. And I have lane number, band number, and the densitometry underneath the bands. What I can do now is I can go back to quantity 1. Whoops, sorry, you probably didn't see this because I have to switch programs. Let me do that now quickly. I think that's here. I'm going to show you Excel. There we go. Okay, so now you should be able to see Excel. So I exported to Excel, and I get, as I mentioned before, I get the rolling disk size and all the sensitivity features I used in step 8, along with the lane number, band number, and density of each band. Now I can go back to quantity 1. So I'm going to, again, switch the programs with this amazing software that I have here. There we go. So hopefully you're able to see quantity 1 now. And I'm going to export this image. First of all, I'm going to save this. So save, or save as. Okay, save it. It's going to save as version 2 in quantity 1, but I'm also going to export it to a JPEG. I'm going to bump the quality up to 100, export, and I'll put this just on my desktop. Okay, now I'll go back to Excel, and again I'll switch the program so you can see what I'm doing here. So here I am in Excel, and I'm going to import that picture. So I'm going to insert picture from file. I'm going to go to my desktop. There it is, double click. And there is my image. So what I can do is reduce the size of the image a little bit. And now I have my image with lane numbers and band numbers right beside the data with lane numbers and band numbers. So what you can see, in effect, what I've done very nicely is I've converted image data to quantifiable data. So I hope this was useful. This was the quick tour of Quantity One. There are many other features in the software for you to be able to do other things, but this is the basics to get you started. And if you have more questions, you can feel free to contact your local FAS, and we'll be happy to help you.